Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you, my brothers and sisters. May God bless you all. Hello and welcome to our today's story, which is about an Iraqi young man who's enlisted in Iraqi army and works in the military field. So Laith, the hero of our today's story, is a military young man attached to the Iraqi army. Our story begins at the end of 2005, when Laith, the Iraqi soldier, was on an official mission in some unidentified Iraqi camp. The mission was related to security issues belonging to a military camp of the US forces that are present and function in Iraq at the time. Laith was stationed in this unidentified military camp, and his mission was to stay there for about 20 days. And because of the nature of his job, a meeting had to take place between the Iraqi soldier, Laith, and an American female soldier. The meeting took place very naturally, and things were going on officially and in a regular manner. Laith's job was to be at a close distance from this female American recruit. Wherever she goes or at any place she be, she would lay eyes on the young Iraqi soldier. He drew this American woman's attention, so wherever she went inside this camp, her eyes were glimpsing him around her everywhere. And it's worthy to know that Laith was a handsome young man with a charming personality, and he had enough knowledge of the English language and managed to use and speak it sufficiently. He met this American recruit, Emilia, and somehow became good friends. When his mission came to an end, Laith had to get back to his own military camp and leave the American one that Emilia was stationed in. Communication between the two began. The American recruit was determined to reach out for Laith's number and even looked for him in his military camp. Emilia managed to find him in the camp he's stationed in, and both of them started seeing each other for some time, and eventually this relationship between the two started to take another level. It's worthy to know at that time, between 2005 to 2006, the situation between the Americans and Iraqis was not easy. There was a highly tension between the two countries, and Americans were not able to roam in the streets of Iraq easily. It was a difficult and complicated situation. So for Laith and Jamulia, it was not easy for them to see each other. After dating for a decent time, their relationship became stronger, and they fell for each other eventually. Emilia proposed and asked Laith about the possibility of them getting married, for Emilia fell for Laith and wanted him as a husband and was determined to marry him. However, things were not supposed to go this way, for to Laith, Emilia was only an American friend and nothing more. Eventually, Laith had to step up and be honest with Emilia. He told her, "To be fair with you, you're an American soldier and you're well familiar with the invasion of the American recruits to my own country, and you're even one of it. Also, you know the public opinion of the Iraqi society towards America as a country and the American soldiers." Amelia's response was that she understands the dire situation in which they live and that it's natural for the Iraqi people to hold grudges towards the Americans because they invaded their country. Laith even continued to say that it's not just about the invasion and the political atmosphere, but their condition goes further because of the sensitive matter of religion. Emilia requested further explanation, and Laith explained that she's a Christian and he's a Muslim guy, and Islam as a religion does not allow him to get married to a Christian wife or someone out of Islamic religion. It's forbidden for such practices to happen. Emilia asked for a final answer about the matter, and Laith, out of courtesy, told her that he's just showing her the full picture and the consequences that might result out of the marriage. For Laith didn't have in his mind the idea of marriage at all, or making a marriage commitment with Emilia, because at the time his country's situation was a bit of complicated. He convinced Emilia that there's no other way, and that's everything he can do, and it's now up to Emilia to decide the future of this relationship. Emilia tried to convince Laith to convert to Christianity and change his religion, but Laith's response was that it's not possible, not even a little bit. His response was doubtless and firm, that he won't make such sacrifice in order to marry her. He told her that if you want us to get married so bad, why don't you convert to Islam and become a Muslim woman? She was no reluctant and told if I did so, would it be possible for us to get married? And Lath's response was that it's not only a matter of religion and that he's trying to count the possible deterrents of this marriage. He told her honestly, even if you converted to Islam, it wouldn't be easy because of the many circumstances that will not help to secure such a marriage. Laith added that there are also morals and customs in the Arab world and Islamic society as a whole that prevent me from being associated with you in marriage as a husband and his wife. Emilia asked to inform her about such morals. He told her that for the Arab society, the women are discreet and wear hijab, as you know, guys. And he continued explaining to her about the whole different atmosphere she's not aware of. He told her it would be ridiculous for you to walk in my neighborhood wearing an indecent sweater, exposing your body to public. It would be a catastrophe. It's not something acceptable in our society. Emilia is not fully aware of the difference between the two societies. She is a 19 years old young girl, and Leif in his 20s. Both are in their prime. Emilia started telling him, if that's your opinion and that's the way you choose to consider our relationship, then I would like you to excuse my decision and to know that this is going to be our last date. Leif said that it's okay, as you wish, and both departed. Leif went back to his camp, also did Emilia. Days passed, and Leif was still feeling okay with the breakup. But the thing is, Leif did not know how much he loves Emilia and how deep he's attached to her until they broke up. The feeling of being empty made him miss her and feel how serious his feeling for her is. Leif thought that it would be something easy to let go of Emilia, but it turned out to be wrong. He started hesitating and started hearing a voice inside of him that's telling him to go and make things right with Emilia. But eventually he made up his mind and was determined not to see her or talk to her again. Because if he does, it will mean that he's approving all her conditions, like converting from Islam and his Arab society. And the same thing will happen to Emilia if she decides to go back to him. It will mean that she will comply to his conditions. So it was more like a battle, and the first one to surrender will comply to the other's conditions. Leith was feeling nervous, and he felt as if he cannot prevent himself from Amelia any longer. He started blaming himself of the way he treated Amelia and the way he blocked her from his life. He was blaming himself for not complying with her terms. He felt weak and said to himself that maybe he should have went along with her opinions and didn't take them seriously, only to keep her close to him. Dear audience, you know better when a person feels weak. They start giving unreasonable justifications for their deeds. 2 exact months passed, and Amelia did not make any move and didn't seem to even care. It seemed that she moved on in her life. The one who seemed to be in agony is Leith. It also seems that he fell in deep love with her and cannot do anything about it. He said to himself that at the end of his shift, he's going to Amelia and see how things are going to be. When his shift is over, Leith went out from the gate of his camp heading for Amelia's, only to see Amelia standing there in front of Leith's camp gates. She was there standing at the camp's gates. She wasn't in her uniform and was wearing casual as camouflage, because, as you know, dear audience, it was dangerous and risky for her to walk around in the area as an American soldier. Leith went straight to her and both exchanged warm salutes. She started talking to him in a weak Arabic language and informed him that in the 2 past months she was learning how to speak and use Arabic language. Out of nowhere, Emilia added and said, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. And that, my friends, is considered as a sign for Amelia to accept the Islamic religion as her own. Emilia made her mind up and took the decision to convert to Islam. She informed Leith that in the past months she was studying and practicing the Islamic religion. The news made Leith very sensitive and touched. It's really something that makes a person touched because it means that a woman preferred you to her country and religion. It wasn't for her a matter of blind and rushed feelings of love. Not at all. She made her decision based on the principle of intellectual awareness and logical acceptance of the Islamic religion. Emilia informed Leith that she's completely convinced of Islam after she studied the religion and admired its practices and message. She felt enlightened by the Islamic religion and completely gave herself to it. And as a proof of her good intention and proof of her willingness of becoming a Muslim woman, she pronounced the testimony of Islam to his ears. Leif was left speechless and honestly didn't have any other choice but to accept her as a Muslim girl, because she looked very convincing and very honest that there was no way for coming back. Leith was already heading to see her. He didn't know that she would be waiting for him outside. He cannot leave her behind now, not after what he heard. Leith informed his beloved that it's a matter of only 2 or 3 days, and he will finish his duty in the army. He asked her how she managed to get out of the camp and arrive here, which is something risky and full of danger. Emilia informed Leith that she already submitted a file to the American army asking the permission to marry an Iraqi soldier, but her request was denied. Leith asked for a solution and a kind of settlement to their situation, but she couldn't come up with any. Emilia came to the conclusion that they are on Iraqi territory and that Leith is an Iraqi citizen, so it's up to him to figure out a solution. He's on his land. She asked if he approved on marrying her, and Leith answered yes without any hesitation. He told her that their marriage is inevitable and not questionable, and no coming back on that. But the problem was Amelia's mandatory military service. Leigh suggested that both of them run away and disappeared completely. And Amelia, the American and adventure loving girl, of course felt enthusiastic of the proposal and immediately agreed on the escaping plan. She told Leith, let's do it now. Leith told her to hold her breath and wait for him to finish his 3 days left of service, and she can use the days left to arrange and prepare herself for the escape plan. It wasn't important where to run. They just wanted to escape. They made a commitment and agreed on the plan. Leif asked her to make her arrangements and finish her efforts. He assured her that on some specific day they were going to get married first and then run away. 3 days later, Emilia and Leif met and held a marriage ceremony. Without going in details, they fled to the north of Iraq. Emilia's name, for personal reasons, became Iman, which means faith in the Arabic language. She loved the name and decided to go by it. She is no longer called Emilia, and the married couple now live in the north of Iraq. About 1 year later, the couple were living in a strange city that even Leith is not familiar with. Both of them felt like being caged in a foreign territory. They often go out, wander the streets, and try to have fun, but it seemed that something is still missing. Both of the couple were not very comfortable around the unfamiliar city, and Amelia, or now a man, after a year had passed, started longing for her homeland, America, and for her family and the lifestyle on the American way. Amelia had enough and could not take it any longer. Leith felt the same way as well, so he asked her for a solution. She told him that the only thing they can do is to return to the US authority and surrender under the American custody. Amelia assured Leith that nothing wrong is going to happen and everything will be settled the right way. She explained that they are safe from any persecution because they are already married and they can't do anything to change that fact. Indeed, the couple made their decision and surrendered to the American forces. But what happened next came as a shock to the couple. For after they turned themselves in to the US Army, Emilia was accused of high treason. It was a shock for both Emilia and Leith. They didn't expect it. She was accused of treason because she left the military service in the US government, and she had already signed all the valid documents proving that she's a military recruit in the US Army. After that, she broke the contract, fled, and failed her mission to serve. This is considered high treason. It also worth considering that she was treated racistly because she renounced her Christian identity and converted to Islam. She was hated because she became a Muslim woman now. The situation of the spouses was not acceptable or even easy in the US military base. Whoever reads her file would not be happy with it. So there was a long delay regarding the status of the spouses in the US base. Things went far away and time passed. They separated the couple and sentenced Leith to 5 years in prison and Amelia to 7 years. Amelia, after a couple of months being held, was transferred to the US capital city, Washington, and was kept as a prisoner there. The US government took all strict measures against her and issued a decision banning her from traveling by air, land, and sea. Leith finally finished his sentence period. These 5 years were much worse than hell to him. A long story short, he wished death to knock on his door to be finally relieved, but even death was not on his side. Leith got out of prison and started confidentially and indirectly looking for his wife, Amelia, or a man. He used confidential or hidden methods to search for his wife, Amelia. For example, he used to ask people with knowledge of the US government to pull some strings for him and ask for his wife. And the only response was that he needed to let go of her and forget the matter completely, because he seeks the impossible. The girl you seek is no longer available, and there is not a single trace of her at all. Leith tried all means, but eventually came to a dead end. He felt despair and completely out of control of the situation. He made up his mind to continue living his life peacefully and not to think of Amelia anymore. Leith was discharged from the Iraqi military and moved on with his life. His family advised him to marry again and to keep this American girl out of his mind because she was the cause of all misfortunes that happened to him and the reason he ended up in prison for 5 years. As you know, my friends, the usual concern and fear of parents for their children is evident in this picture. Leigh's family suggested that he marry one of his cousins and move on with his life. You know, the traditional way. But Leith was not accepting the idea, as he was not even considering the possibility of marrying someone else after Amelia. His family kept urging him in every possible way, however, he adamantly refused. Almost 3 years have passed since Leith was released from prison, so 8 years of his life have passed now. Suddenly, he was able to find out the location of Amelia after all that time. She was home in America, of course. And what happened is the following. Amelia eventually got out of prison, but she couldn't travel because the US government denied her that right, as you know. She wanted a solution and began to think of a way out. As people say, somehow Amelia managed to get her name off the US no travel list and returned to Iraq. It's worth mentioning, dear audience, that an American woman on Iraqi lands without any military or even official mission, and at a time of crisis, will be in a great danger. And in the worst case, she may be subjected to murder, kidnapping, or something like that. What Amelia did is that she traveled across the seas to Amman in Jordan. which made her very close to Iraqi lands and closer to her lover Laith. So she began to think of a solution to reach Laith, or at least to tell him that she was in Jordan. My dear fellows, what's going to happen next is going to be very shocking to your ears and will make you live in astonishment. Amelia managed to reach the border area between the two countries. She met a man who works as a cargo truck driver between the borders of Iraq and Jordan. This was in 2011 or 2012. It wasn't 2005 anymore. Amelia asked the truck driver to transfer her from the Jordanian border into Iraqi territory. Fortunately for her, the cargo driver was a good person, and he informed her of the dangerous act she's willing to do. He told her that you're going to risk your life doing so and advised her not to do such a thing, because both of them will end up dead, no doubt. It was an impossible thing for the driver to do. Emilia tried her best to convince him and offered him a decent amount of money in exchange for his favor, but his reply was a firm no. The driver didn't agree for Emilia's own safety. Emilia by that time was capable of speaking good Arabic, and this was for her own benefit. She couldn't speak like natives for sure, but managed easily to communicate with others using Arabic language. The driver asked her about her business in Iraq. He wanted her to tell him more about the mystery behind the address she struggled to reach. Emilia responded that she's looking for this specific guy, but she was hesitant to tell him more or the whole story because she couldn't trust anybody at this stage. So it was hard for her even to ask this man to go to the address and to inform Laith of Emilia's location in Jordan. She was hesitant and worried because she was aware of what she was doing. Emilia asked the driver to deliver a photo of some sort to Laith's own address. So the driver's only job was to deliver this photo to Laith and to inform him that the one in the photo is now in Jordan, and that's it. The driver accepted because it was something easy to do, and he drove off to Laith's homeland, Al Mosul. The driver reached Al Mosul and started looking for this guy, Laith. He managed to find the address. He was instructed by Amelia to hand the photo over to Laith only. The driver, after paying some efforts, finally reached Laith and paid him a visit. Laith welcomed the stranger without knowing what was waiting for him. He was completely unaware of the matter. The driver introduced himself to Laith and informed him about the nature of his job. He told Laith, "I have a photo that you might like to take a look at." It was Amelia's photo. When Laith saw it, tears came out of his eyes immediately. Dear audience, you will say to yourself that he was crying because he saw Amelia in the picture, but the shocking thing is that she wasn't alone in that picture. There was an 8 years old girl with her that looked exactly like Amelia. The little girl was Laith's own daughter. It was something that urged you to cry, and Leif couldn't hold his own sorrowful tears. Leif thanked him and told him, "Your job is done here. You can go," without telling him about the identity of the people in the picture. He asked the driver if he really met Emilia. The driver replied with affirmation and added that she was also carrying this little blonde baby. He even told him that the little girl can speak Arabic better than her mom. Leith was overwhelmed with emotions. When he learned that he had a little daughter and that his wife is fine and is looking for him, Leith, with great eagerness and determination, asked the driver to accompany him and set off to the same place where Amelia and their daughter were. The driver was not ready. He told Leith about how dangerous it could be to travel at night, and the highway is full of gangs and kidnappers. He continued to talk about how risky and full of troubles the driver's job is. So Leith calmed himself down and gave his number to the truck driver to deliver it to the woman in the picture. After his mission was done with Leith, the driver took off at around 9 p.m. to the highway, having Leith's phone number in his pocket. The hour was now about 1 a.m., and Leith, agonized and weary, couldn't take it any more because of his anxiety and the fact that he's now a father and has a daughter of his own. He was assured that it's his daughter because of their similar looks, and he even showed the picture to his family, and they all affirmed that this little girl looks like him. It was obvious to them that she's related to Leith. Leif couldn't wait any longer. He turned on his car and went looking for his family, heading to the Iraqi Jordanian border. Out of sudden and misfortune, Leith was stopped on the highway by hijacks and bandits. It was unknown to which side they belonged, actually. They stopped Leith and forced him to get out of the car. The anonymous bandits started questioning him about his destination. Leith replied that he's going to Jordan. The bandits wanted an excuse, of course, to stop him, so they accused him of doing some suspicious act of some sort. They started searching his car. Unfortunately for him, they found the picture of his daughter and wife, who was clearly to them an American citizen. The bandits asked about the nature of this photo and what brought it to his hands. Laith answered that this is his Jordanian wife, but of course they didn't believe him. They said this woman doesn't look like an Arab woman. A long story short, Laith was held captive. They covered his eyes and poor Laith was kidnapped. Moving on to Amelia. The driver managed to meet Amelia again and handed her Laith's number. Amelia was very pleased for sure. Finally, she knew Laith's number and location. She called the number directly, but there was no answer. She tried endless times until she felt helpless and thought that the number she had received from the driver was invalid, because despite her many attempts to call, it was always out of service. Amelia told herself that it doesn't make any sense for Leigh to deliver me his number and turn it off later. It couldn't be. She was ignorant of what happened to Leif. She didn't know that Leif couldn't hold his temper and hurried out searching for her and his daughter. Let us, dear audience, tackle her situation and what she felt and been through. We will get to Leif later on. Days and weeks had passed, and Amelia couldn't get an answer. She tried every day tirelessly to call Leif and get an answer, but no one there to answer. Things continued this way for about 3 months. Emilia started thinking to herself, how could Laith forget about me this way? How could he even ignore the fact that he has a daughter of his own and not do anything about it? Emilia felt helpless because it was impossible for her to enter Iraq and even more impossible to return to America. She felt stuck. She had been in Jordan for more than 3 months now, and she was in a state of despair due to the financial hardship she was experiencing, as she had a child, as you know, who needed great care. Eventually, Emilia made up her mind and managed to find a person that can help her cross into the Iraqi territory. She used the help of a smuggler and started her journey through the desert. Nearly at the end of a safe journey and at a close distance from Leith's address, Emilia fell under the captive of hijacks. The smuggler, Emilia, and Hoda, the young girl, were all held captive under the mercy of the kidnappers. It was a valuable loot for the kidnappers. Two people with American citizenship. It was the hunt of the year. Ransom of an American woman would be in millions. They kept them as hostages in a farm-like place, in which the kidnappers used to captivate and hide their hostages, a tightly closed, heavily guarded place which contains 20 to 50 hostages at least. Amalia identified herself to the kidnappers as an American citizen. They were lucky, of course, and tried to take the best advantage of it. Indeed, they demanded $1 million from the American forces as a ransom for Amelia and another million for the little girl, after they were able to communicate with the American side and inform them of the ransom. Amelia was helpless. She tried to convince the kidnappers that she's considered as an Iraqi citizen, and the little girl is an Iraqi citizen too, because she's a daughter of an Iraqi man, obviously, just like the rest of them, but with no result. The kidnappers wouldn't have compassion. Their only concern is money. Now we go back to Leith. To your surprise, dear audience, Leith was held captive at the same farm-like area where his wife and daughter were captured. Can you imagine? The ransom on Leigh's life was $50,000, and the negotiations were still going on between the kidnappers and his family. Leigh's family managed to get the money, so the kidnappers told Leith that he would be released soon. But before that happened, Leith was forced by them to work on the farm as a cleaner and assigned to some routine work to take advantage of him being there, of course. They assured him that he would be free in a couple of days. While Leith was doing his housework, cleaning the farm's outdoor garden, his eyes fell on a kitchen window where he saw a little girl doing some work in the kitchen. There was only 6 meters between Leith and this unidentified child. It wasn't allowed for the hostages to talk to each other under no circumstances. Guys, Leith was looking at his own daughter without knowing that she's his, as he had never met her before. He only saw her once in the photograph. Leith had some feelings gathering inside of him, like an instinct telling him that this little girl belongs to him somehow. He didn't move an eye of her and kept watching her closely. Poor Leif managed without anyone seeing him to get close to the little girl and talk to her. The little 9 years old girl lifted her head up and looked at him, but didn't say anything back. Leif returned to his chores, but the little girl's face was the only thing he could think about. He was telling himself that this girl is the one I saw on the photo, but with some hesitation and excitement at the same time. He felt like he's getting delusional. He went back to the little girl, and time was running out of him because he's not far from getting out. When Leith became at a close distance from the girl again, he shouted the name of her mother. He shouted, "Emilia!" Because if the little girl heard the name of her mother, she would make some reaction evidently. Indeed, the little girl immediately stared at Leith when he shouted her mother's name, as if she was electrocuted. Arabic was not her mother tongue. She couldn't easily speak the language, which made it clear to Leith 100% that the girl is his own daughter. It was truly a horrific and painful scene. Leith grabbed the little girl and tried to hug her behind the bars of the window. He told her, "I am Leith, your own father." He tried to bring her closer to the window so he could hug her tightly. Really emotional scene. Just then, the chief of the bandits arrived and caught a glimpse of Leith cuddling someone from behind the window bars. The man lunged at Leith and pulled him away from her. When he looked at Leith's face, he saw tears covering his face. Huda was also in tears. The man felt pity and asked Leith why he was crying. Leith replied that this little girl is his daughter. "How is the American girl your daughter?" asked the man. Leith explained that the girl is not American and she's his daughter. He added, "Your gang kidnapped both of us, but separately." Leif was able to understand the situation and how his wife and daughter ended up in this confinement farm. He estimated that Amelia tried tirelessly to contact him, and when it got no result, she decided to cross the border, and she and Huda were kidnapped. After Leith had made sure that his family was detained with him, he refused to be released, asking for her daughter's release instead. He suggested paying a $50,000 ransom to free his young daughter, not him. The only thing Leith could do then was to compromise his daughter's freedom. It really hurts. The gang had informed Leith that his ransom was only $50,000, while the ransom for his daughter was much more. He said that the ransom for the girl and the mother was $1 million each. Leif definitely didn't have such a large sum. He didn't even know how his family managed to pay his 50,000 ransom. The deal fell through, and he couldn't get his daughter to take his place. His request was sternly refused. They explained to him that the 50,000 ransom will only be given to them when his family is sure Leith is safe and about to be released. In the end, the gang had felt sorry for Leith and told him that this little girl was free to go for absolutely nothing concerning his Iraqi nationality, and he demanded $1 million for his wife Emilia. Still, Leith now couldn't leave his daughter by herself and get out to safety. It wasn't possible for him to do such a thing after the family had met for the first time in years. He cannot leave them no matter what. But eventually Leith was set free without his consent. He was forced to be delivered to his family so the bandit can reach for the ransom. After Leith was set free, he started thinking of a way to collect $1 million to set his wife and daughter free. Such a big sum was impossible to collect. However, Leif didn't give up and tried to ask advice and help from the tribal leaders in his territory, but to no avail. Nothing could be done. Leif even begged and humiliated himself to the rich for help, but no one answered his cries. It was a huge amount of money. So Leif reached a dead end. His only way out was to inform the American forces in Iraq about an American citizen being held under criminals' captivity. He thought to himself that the American government would pay the ransom easily and without hesitation because $1 million was nothing compared to the wealth of the American government. Leif managed to get a meeting with an American general and informed him of the condition of his wife and daughter. The general was not easy with Leif. He told him that his woman had been arrested by the US military forces once and deported to America. She was also banned from leaving her country. However, she broke US laws again and returned without a permit to Iraqi territory. The general continued by saying that the US government did its best to prevent Emilia from returning to Iraq, but the woman did not comply. And frankly, the government doesn't guarantee Emilia will not be kidnapped for the second time after paying the ransom. Leith was not giving up on his family. The only solution he had was in the hands of the United States government. Leith was told to stop working for 3 days until the government makes settlements and properly studies the situation. The US government was informed that the little girl had been exempted from paying the ransom, and that the 1 millionth ransom was only for his wife, Emilia. Leith didn't know what the US government was up to. They even asked Leith to enter into negotiations with the kidnappers to reduce the ransom money as much as possible. The deal was made between him and the kidnappers, and Leith managed to reduce the ransom amount to $500,000. The United States government had been informed of the developments and had requested information on how the handover occurred. Leith told them that only he could deliver the ransom to the gang and get his wife back. The government informed Leith that the handover would take place under the watch of the United States government, and Leith agreed. The awaited day came at last. Leith set off with the ransom to the agreed upon area, where the handover would take place. He was connected to a tracking device by the US military to locate him, keeping him under the eyes of the military. Finally, the process was done successfully, and Leif managed to get his wife and daughter back. After Amelia's relentless effort, the government assured Amelia that Leith was going to be released soon after going through the regular paperwork, and he will be out in no time. On the contrary to the government promises, poor Leith had been in prison for more than 6 months. He was eventually released, but with a travel ban preventing all family members from traveling outside the USA. A long, warm meeting occurred between family members. Leith took them under his protection away from the area. However, after about 10 kilometers, the American military forces stopped the family and arrested the three of them immediately. 2 days later, it turned out that the family had been transferred to the United States of America. Their Lath was imprisoned and accused of involvement in kidnapping after scrutiny and investigation of the case. Of course, all of that was empty talk. It was real torment for the poor family. What they had been through was a real hell and everlasting suffering. Emilia, being in her own country and enjoying constitutional rights, was able to hire lawyers to defend her husband and free him from the government's false accusations. She even threatened the US government with creating a public fuss by using the media and spreading her story to the American citizens. The situation would then get out of the US government's hands because Amelia's story could be the scandal of the year. The entire family is now united and living together happily in the United States. Huda has grown into a young woman who's now about 18 years old. We'd like to use our channel as a platform to express our warmest regards to the Prey family members and thank them for sharing their unfortunate story with its happy ending with us. We hope this story got your attention and your admiration, dear audience. If so, please don't forget to like. And I see you in a new beautiful story. Bye bye.